Good morning from Dunsmore Moving Dirt. We're finally on the yard after 7 or 8 weeks. So got in late yesterday, day before yesterday late. And wanted to put my dozer in the shop so I could do some service work on it. And that's usually the only time I do it is when I'm through with the job. I leave my dozer out on the job and then just move from job to job. So finally got in. I hadn't been here in 7 weeks probably at the yard. So anyway, I wanted to get the dozer in the shop. Of course, when I'm not around here, I just throw stuff in there and then I've got to make room for it. So I did that day before yesterday and got it in about dark. It was supposed to rain, and then yesterday, of course, you got to go chase parts, and I had to do some stuff in town and went and done that. And of course, that killed a day. Of course, the older I get, I like to kind of visit when I go places, so that's okay. Kind of stay in touch. You got to, you know. And did that. So this morning we're going to start servicing the dozer and stuff. I've got to unhook the trailer off my pickup and get it closer to where I'm probably going to need something out of it. Get the Kubota out of the way. Plan on changing oil and a couple of fuel filters, and there's some of the stuff I got yesterday. And I've got a lot of that old red mud from up there in Wilbarger County. That's where I've been all this time, and that stuff sits up like concrete if it ever gets on there. That stuff is just like concrete right there. So, and it hadn't rained enough to wash it off. I usually get it washed off if I'm out in the country and it rains, but it hadn't rained up there. So we've been blessed with rain here around the house. Last 2 weeks got a little over 2.5 inches, so that's starting to put a little bit of water in the pond. You can kind of at least see the water from standing way back here. It's probably likes about 2 foot or so being full, so that's good. So anyway, that's what we're going to be doing this morning, kind of getting ready, and I'm going to start servicing this thing up. Let y'all see some of that. I got to take all these panels off and on both sides. I've got a squeak in there when I first started up of the morning. I think it's the idler pulley. I've got one of them. I had one in case it went out while I wasn't around here. And got a couple hoses back in here behind the fan that are starting to leak where the connections are, so I'm going to change them up and do that. Fuel filters and oil, and kind of clean it up a little bit and see what else happens the rest of the week. May change my cutting edge or flip it over. I've got a side that's ready to use, so I may do that. So anyway, we'll let y'all see some of that today, kind of while we're working around the shop. More parts. Had to find them first. They was in the back of the pickup. This is about the handiest thing I guess they ever invented. I used to use an air ratchet all the time, but the time you wrestle around the hose and everything, this is so much better. Don't want to get my new hat dirty that I got the other day, so I put on the mechanic hat. Opens it up quite a bit where I can see, looks like I've got another oil leak up here on the line. I don't know what that, I'll have to clean it up and start it up and see if oil's seeping out of it. Something has, because there's dirt stuck to it. I bet you that line goes all the way to the back. If I've got to replace it, hard to believe how something like that would start leaking. I mean, it can't even move nowhere, but I guess that pressure and stuff on there works on it quite a bit. So anyway, I'm going to start draining some oil out of this thing. think it's through draining. The engine was cold, so the oil took quite a while, but I've got one bucket full. I'm gonna crawl in there and get the other bucket, shut it off, and come up here and get the filters changed and pour oil in it. I don't want to leave it sitting here with no oil in it. Someone hop in here and start it up, that would be bad. So. This is not the fun part, crawling under here. Well, that didn't go as planned. I changed my bucket out a while ago, put it under there, then I went get something to eat and run to town. I thought, well, that'll drain while I'm coming back. Well, it would have if I'd opened the valve up, so it's starting to drain again. So I'm gonna go ahead and change the 2 filters while that's draining. So plan A may be scratched. We'll go to plan B. Whenever I can, I'd rather come to the shop, change oil, but when you're out in the field, I usually clear the ground off and dig a little pit, then just pull over it. But I was on one job where there was a bunch of rattlesnakes in that area, which I always try to watch of a morning and stuff when you get on your dozer. But I was planning on changing the oil the next morning. So when I quit that evening, I didn't want to start it up the next morning and get all the oil mixed up. So, and it was in the summertime, it was hot and everything. So before I shut the engine off, I cleared the grass off the ground, cut it down to bare ground where I can not have to worry about crawling on that grass the next morning. And I dug out a little old pit, kind of where I was going to dump it, and pulled my dozer over where I was going to put it and shut it down. I mean, it was bare ground underneath it. So dropped my pan to change oil. So the next morning, all I had to do was crawl under there and open the drain, let it drain, you know. And it was in the summertime. Matter of fact, the engine was still warm the next morning when I got there. So I kind of walked around it and looked, and even though I'd cleared the grass off of it, you never know if a rattlesnake had crawled underneath there. And believe me, there's not enough room under that bulldozer for you and a rattlesnake. So anyway, I'd walked around the dozer, kind of looked under the tracks, even had some parts cleaner, and I kind of sprayed it in places where I thought something might be hiding, you know. And I looked and looked, and I just didn't feel good about crawling under there for some reason. I don't usually get like that very often. So I mean, I looked from both sides, walked all the way down and looked under the track on the other side, because once you're under there, if there's a snake, you're going to get bit, because you just can't get out of the way quick enough. So anyway, I was just about ready to crawl underneath the bulldozer. I'd talked myself into just diving in and getting it. There wasn't nothing. And I just happened to look. This was dirt, if it's dirt, but right there kind of where that yellow plate is, there was a little old ground rattler. And he wasn't big enough hardly to rattle, and anymore they don't like to rattle. But I seen him, and he was curled up, and time I'd have got under there, I mean, he'd have got one leg or the other, because I stick my legs down in there, but I'd lean down right in that hole looking underneath there. And anyway, I happened to see him, and he hadn't moved yet. He was curled up, just waiting for me to dive underneath that thing. So anyway, I took care of that problem. And the hardest thing I ever had to do was then crawl under there, knowing that a lot of times where there's one, there's two. So I made extra sure this time. I mean, I went through the same deal, man. I had my shovel. I was poking around every hole there was, and finally, I just had to trust the good Lord that that was the only snake that was under there. I killed him, and I crawled under there, and yet that was, I like to never crawl underneath that bulldozer after that. But anyway, that was about the closest I've come to crawling under a bulldozer with a live rattlesnake under it. So anyway, that's just a little story as I'm killing time. So anyway, we're going to get that oil drained out here in a little bit, if it'll hurry up and do it. It sure is cooling off outside, so we're going to drain that here, and we'll may let you see some of that one just a little bit. Bye. Finally got all the oil drained out. When you open the valve the right direction, it'll drain out. I shut it off because I swapped buckets, and I thought I turned it the right direction, but I don't guess it did. Anyway, it's all out there now. Now, I'm going to fill it full of oil and start it up, and that's probably all I'm going to do. Well, I don't know when my battery died, but I started it up before it got the oil all in it, started it up, and I was hoping I'd hear my little squeak that I did, been hearing, and I did, but time you get out of the cab and get down here, it usually quits, so it's not very long. So what I may have to do is just loosen the belt off and turn a few things and see if it could be that tensioner pulley or the idler pulleys on the other side. It may be that, maybe whatever it is, it's rough enough when you turn it to feel like it's growling a little bit. And kind of blew all the dirt off that right there where that was leaking, and none had zip ties on it holding it up. I bet you it may be there's an O-ring right in that fitting. Now it could have got hot and just kind of disintegrated, but I may take that apart when I'm back out here and see if that O-ring, or just put a new one in it, just see what it does. So anyway, you know, earlier we was talking about that rattlesnake I found laid up in the corner of the blade right there. I've never been bit yet, but I come close, and that's the closest I've come to being on the same level as one, and that's when it gets bad. But anyway, if you don't know much about rattlesnakes, there's little ground rattlers like that. They may just have one button on them, and you couldn't hear them rattling if they was to rattle. But they say them little ones are more dangerous than the big ones, because when they bite you, they don't know how much poison to put in you. They just dump all what they got in you. And it's really harder on you than when a big one bites you, because he don't give you a full dose of it like them little ones do. So anyway, I've got a picture of that. As a matter of fact, I took a picture of it whenever it happened and sent it to my wife and said, look what I found this morning. Of course, she freaked out. She thought I'd done been down there with it. So anyway, took a picture of it before I put it to sleep permanently. So anyway, no harm done, at least to me. It was to the rattlesnake. I've killed a lot of rattlesnakes in my time, and a lot of them have been around the house. We've killed them at the bottom of the steps, in the garden, and you just have a sense to always watch what you're doing, where you step, where you put your hand and stuff. And these are a few of the ones that, now these were some pretty big snakes that I've killed. That one's still got some skin on it, but usually these snakes are pretty good size. Them may be 3-4 foot long, big around the baseball bat. And I used to have a whole box full of them, and that's just kind of a thing you do before you kill a rattlesnake. You cut, after you kill the rattlesnake, you cut his rattlers off, so save them. Don't ask me why, I just always done it. So anyway, that's just a little bit of some of the stuff we did today in the shop. And we'll get some more video of taking off them hoses and maybe trying to find that squeak, see which one it is, putting a pulley on there. So if you enjoy watching these videos, like for you subscribe and send any comments or questions. I always enjoy reading those and answering them. If someone's got a question, share it with all your friends. So till the next video, this is James with Dunsmore Moving Dirt. Keep your blades shiny and your tracks clean. Bye.